My version of the first live action Hulk movie, I think, should be directed by John Woo, just as he directed the live action Hulk movie in 2003. I'd like to talk about a product that I own, and I hope that everyone out there gets this product. It's called the Model KX-T GDAF1 telephone. It's got a lot of cool features, and I've enjoyed it for years. Please go to Amazon.com, insert the code that you can find on this channel to get one of the coolest devices in the universe. And when you do, remember, you're not only getting a good phone, you're also supporting this channel. Now back to the show. I'm only asking for that to start 11 years earlier with a few modifications. First, the character known as David Banner from the original 2003 live action Hulk movie, I think should be shifted to Brian Banner. I'm okay with it starring Nick Nolte. I think he's a fine actor. But I think he should be called Brian Banner because that's the name of the father of Bruce Banner in the Marvel Comics. Second, I want Brian Banner to have a dual function, meaning he's not only a scientist for the military that lost his mind, he's also someone who's in the occult, dark mysticism, and has his own copy of the Darkhold. Much like the 2003 movie, you see him modifying his genes that will later go on to affect Bruce Banner through the story. So basically, a lot of what John Woo did, I want in my version of the Incredible Hulk movie. Just with those changes. Final change at the end of this Incredible Hulk movie, or modification of this John Woo directed Hulk movie that starts in 1992. For my experiment, Talbot doesn't die. And instead of Hulk escaping to a faraway jungle to avoid capture by the military, he gets captured at the end of this movie and taken into military custody. Some of the stars for this movie that I haven't discussed earlier, I want Harrison Ford to be Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross. I want Betty Ross to be played by either Winona Ryder, Debbie Moore, or Jodie Foster. My choice would be Jodie Foster. I don't mind Talbot being portrayed by Josh Lucas. And I would like to see Rick Jones somehow inserted into the story. Rick Jones is a particular character in the Marvel Universe that's a close associate and friend of the Incredible Hulk. And I think he should be in this movie as well for the Incredible Hulk 1992. And I also want him to be played by actor Ricky Schroeder. Now that the first movie in my MCU is out of the way, we're going to move on, or I'm going to move on to the year 1994 for the second MCU of my phase one, which will be the live action movie of Hulk versus Wolverine. For this movie, I'm going to have a beginning tease. The beginning tease will be S.H.I.E.L.D. discovers that their Weapon X program was compromised with the help of the Ancient One, Wong, Dr. Druid, and Stick while they were hunting the Skrull vampire Gravik. At the same time, S.H.I.E.L.D. is imprisoning both the Hulk and Wolverine together, which will lead into a fight at the end of this movie that a lot of comic book fans want to see, which is Hulk versus Wolverine. This movie will include the Weapon X program, and it will showcase, to some extent, Deadpool from the Marvel Comics, Maverick, Silver Fox, and a few others. The ending scene will be that Hulk will fight Wolverine, but neither of them escape the facility of the Weapon X program. They just get recaptured by S.H.I.E.L.D. and relocated somewhere else. This will have a special guest star actor, William Atherton, as William Stryker. And I would recommend WWF wrestler Roddy Piper as Sabretooth. The ending scene for this movie, or ending tease, would be Deacon Frost, the vampire, saving Squirrel Vampire Gravik from being captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. As for the other actors that be tied to this 1994 MCU movie that I'm suggesting for my MCU would be Maverick, played by either Peter Weller or Brian Bosworth. I would choose Hollywood actor Brian Bosworth. Silver Fox, my actress choice for her would be Maria Alonso. Sabretooth, I'm willing to be open to Hollywood actor Tyler Mane, Lee Schreiber, but as I've stated before, I want Roddy Piper, the WWF former wrestler. Deadpool, since this is early in the timeline, I don't think Ryan Reynolds would be available, so I would go with the next best option, actor Jim Carrey. We've already covered William Stryker, who should play him. I think this movie should be directed by John Carpenter. Why? Because back in the 80s, John Carpenter was most famous for a movie that I enjoyed. It was called They Live. 1996, my preferred live action movie that I would want for my MCU will be Blade. The lead actor, Eric, otherwise known as the Marvel character Blade, will have a beginning tease where the lead actor is trailing the other Marvel character known as Morbius because he's the vampire who made him a daywalker. Of course, much like the original, in the original timeline, Blade's main rival will be Deacon Frost. And the movie will unfold like the original Blade movie from the actual timeline, but with some slight modifications. First of all, the vampires will have more of a gang-like look to them. At least that's how I would prefer it for my Blade movie, instead of what we got in the original Blade movie, which were more vampire characters in suits and ties. Think of the vampire movie Lost Boys. The ending tease will be Gravik showing up at the last minute to try and save Deacon Frost from Blade, but to no avail because Blade would have already had destroyed him. That would be Vampire Gravik showing up at the last part of the scene to combat Blade. One final change from the original movie for the purposes of my Blade movie will be that the Darkhold will be what Deacon Frost uses as a power-up in his battle with Blade. Instead of some sort of ancient writings found in libraries, which was the plot device for the original Blade movie on the original timeline. Morbius, for the beginning tease of Blade, I think should be played by actor Jason Scott from the movie Lost Boys. The co-star for Blade, much like the co-star for the original Blade on the original timeline, I think should be played by actress Amy Hunter from the television series Pacific Blue. And Deacon Frost should be played by Hollywood actors Emilio Estevez, David Faustino from Married with Children, a.k.a. Bud Bundy, Craig Schaefer from the movie Dracula 2, Richard Grieco from the television series 21 Jump Street, or Dorff, the original actor who played on the original Blade movie, Stephen Dorff. He also played in another movie called Space Truckers. I don't have any preferred actor for the Deacon Frost role. So I'll leave this one open for the time being. Of course, I think this movie should be directed by David S. Goyer. For my 1998 live-action movie, I choose to title it Punisher and Nick Fury. The main villain for this movie will be Hammerhead. I don't have any original movie to compare this to, so this is straight out of my own imagination. This story will take place in the year 1995, even though this live-action movie will be released in 1998. The idea of this movie will start off with Hammerhead unknowingly making bioweapons purchases from Gravik, resulting in the development of Marvel characters like Tombstone, Purple Man, and Mr. Negative. At the ending of this movie, Punisher gets captured by S.H.I.E.L.D. And it was through this movie that Nick learns about experiments the aliens known as Skrulls are doing within their Weapons Plus program. The beginning tease for this movie will be Madam Web training with the Marvel character known as Stick. The ending tease for this movie will be the introduction of Marvel constructing his own Negabands after a failed battle with the Marvel character known as Vial. Let's go over some of the actors I think should be playing some of these roles. Mr. Negative, I think, should be played by James Franco. Tombstone, I think the actor who should be selected for Tombstone should be Michael Dorn, star of Star Trek, as Worf. The Purple Man, I think, should be played by William Baldwin. He's most famous for the movie Backdraft. Hammerhead, I think, should be played by Joe Pesci. He's the star of Lethal Weapon and Home Alone. Of course, everybody, or most comic book fans, probably remember James Franco. He's most famous for his role as Harry Osborn in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movie. For my I like to take a moment to talk about my favorite product, the HT-904 Turbo Force Tabletop Fan. Air circulator, small, white, for personal use. It's one of my favorite fans. I personally have one and I enjoy it immensely. It has 3 settings besides off, and it's usually priced at a very low cost. Please go to Amazon and pick up your Honeywell HT-904 Turbo Fan. Turbo Force Fan. Also, before we get back to the show, remember to look below on this channel for the code, because if you use the code to get this fan, you are supporting this channel. Now let's get back to the show. Final move for my Phase 1 MCU will be in the year 2000. This will be Avengers 1. My idea of Avengers 1 would depict a covert style team as opposed to the film Avengers 1 on the original timeline that was more dynamic with a whole lot of expensive special effects involving a large cast of characters aside from the main characters. The aim for this film will be that of a small budget project, leaning into the covert theme direction. This Avengers movie, my Avengers preferred movie, would include Marvel characters Marvel, but his skin tone will be primarily blue when he joins the team. Before that, he'll have his human disguise, which will mirror that of a Caucasian male. And of course, Marvel will have his rival that will evolve into a sort of friendship. And the character I'm speaking about is a Talos. Similar to the Talos that most of us MCU fans of the original timeline movie were introduced to in the Captain Marvel movie. The synopsis is: S.H.I.E.L.D. discovers the Skrulls' agenda to activate people's X gene for weaponization using modified gamma radiation mounted on 7 missiles located on every continent of Earth. The consequence of these missiles hitting their target will be that many humans will die due to gamma exposure, while some will turn into mutants. To stop the Skrulls on Earth, S.H.I.E.L.D. selects Dr. Banner, Punisher, Blade, Talon, Wong, Marvel, and the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Madam Web, to covertly stop them. Now, before I continue, I mentioned Madam Web as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, which she's not in comics, but for the purposes of my movie, because I think she's an important character and she should be on this list, I'm making her into a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative. The background for her story, which I think should be explained, is that S.H.I.E.L.D. found her minor gifts of seeing things ahead of time, the future, to be important to their work, saving the world and stuff like that. For that reason, she was brought on the team, and her husband and Howard Stark works out or create or develop some level of cybernetics and an enhanced suit to give her mobility to be a field agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. That plus the training from Stick allows her to be on this Avengers roster for Avengers 1. Of course, this will be a younger version of Madam Web to tell a coherent story. Continuing, Marvel joins the Avengers after listening to Skrull Talos and his story of how unfair the Kree are to his people. And because of that, how his former ally and friend turned to the dark side and became a vampire Skrull. The final act of Avengers 1 showcases them disabling some of the Skrull missiles and Hulk being camera exposed while escaping S.H.I.E.L.D. capture. So, a calm Hulk who later evolves as S.H.I.E.L.D. comes into conflict with alien Skrull who are trying to fire off missiles to activate the dormant genes in some humans, gets exposed by people taking cameras, while everybody else still stayed covert and out of the public eye. He gets seen as the Incredible Hulk. So Banner gets exposed as the Incredible Hulk. And in that fiasco, Hulk escapes S.H.I.E.L.D.'s capture. Also, who will be on this team will be the Wolverine, because he too, in the previous movie along with Hulk, was captured and then was convinced to join the team. At the end of the movie, we see clinics being set up to help people who were exposed to the gamma radiation that was released in the atmosphere for the missiles that S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers failed to stop. There were some missiles that were deprogrammed and prevented from hitting their target, while a few others managed to get close enough to their target to affect certain populations. And for a special tease, ending tease, I like to showcase Selene, who is one of Marvel's oldest mutants, feeding on some of the victims who are close to dying at these SHIELD nursing camps. And the Kree, having heard from their operative, Marvel, that Skrull on Earth experimenting on humans, decide to make their way to Earth as an army, because they now see Earth as a possible threat to their existence, given the information that mutant genes are being triggered for the purposes of destroying them. So essentially, the Kree understand that Skrull's plan is to try and use the mutant X gene, or the mutants with X genes, as a weapon to combat them. The reason why the Skrulls are using humans is because they know the big secret, that the Kree were experimenting on humans to combat them. The Kree invasion will lead into the next phase of my MCU, which within a month's time I will develop videos explaining how I think the next phase of this version of the MCU should be conducted.